Hello, hello, Zeteo here. Today we're going to be doing some casting. I'm going to do a couple of things a little bit differently than your typical cast, though. So I'm going to try casting at 1.5 times speed because I know some of these matches can be a little bit slow on some of these maps, and I want to make fast paced content. So hopefully the 1.5 times speed is good, especially on these slower maps. Second thing is I want to try using Command and Conquer music, and if you guys are a fan of that, hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and hopefully YouTube will let me keep it in there. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's hit all the right buttons. Make sure that my mic is on. Okay, cool.
Game
All right. Anyways,
started.
we got our game here. We got whoop. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Okay, we got Barcast spawn at the bottom center here as our red Armada player, and then we got Andy spawn as our blue Armada player in the top center Armada guy. This is Prismatic Anomaly. It is a newer map that just came out, I believe, last weekend. But at the bottom left here, in case you guys don't know, you can see some map information about who made it. This one made by Zagupi. We've actually had the privilege of having 3 new 1v1-ish maps. Of course, you can play these on small teams as well, or if you want to play large teams, you can do Poverty, I suppose, but I'm not really a big fan of that. But either way, we got, Barcast spawned here, building some bots eventually here. It is a solar map, there's no wind, so you got to keep that in mind. Bots can be tricky because of that. On the other side of the map, we have Andy spawning with a vehicle lab here. Now, vehicles, again, no wins. Vehicles cost a little bit more metal and a little bit less energy than bots in terms of, their density or their resource distribution. On a map like this, the mechs are a little bit spread out, but they are a little bit bigger. 2.1s are a little bit bigger than your typical mechs, so you get a little bit more metal out of them, but at the same time, they are spread out and it's hard to kind of grab them. And so you see openers that are a little bit slower here. You don't see early con turrets and stuff like that, especially because you're reliant on solar. And so I expect these players to build a bunch of constructors to help assist the lab and maybe move the commander out instead, because your metal is going to be that low to start with here. So we'll see how they end up doing it. So far, Andy here just getting 1 constructor to assist the lab, pushing out with his commander. Moving it forward, I want to note that too, because I see a lot of players move laterally, and on this map that can be kind of good because you have these bigger clusters of 3 mexes in the corner, and that can be really valuable to have early on since they are closer together. But on the way there's only a couple of mexes, right? So it's not like you're getting a ton of metal by the time you get there. But then meanwhile, taking a center approach maybe yields a little bit less metal to start with, but at the same time, lets you kind of just control more of the map. And if you control the center area here, it could be a big deal because that means raids have to go all the way around to attack, and then it's a little bit easier to stop. You hopefully have some radar to see it coming, and you just have this nice early warning system, and it makes it a lot easier to defend. Barcast is going to go laterally. It looks like he's sending his commander to that left-hand side, building on some walls here. I like this move a lot, actually, because it prevents raiders from coming in this way directly, so they have to go around, and that means it's a little bit easier to defend against them. And then you can also maybe they don't know the wall exists yet, so they run this way and then say oops, and then they gotta it's just extra time on the first time that they find it. But yeah, Barcat's moving his commander out to that right hand, or to the left hand side. Has 3 cons on the bot lab, so plenty of production here. No con turret yet. He's actually going to use one of those cons out here to expand. This probably could have been a little bit sooner here because the metal that you start with really is not much, considering that you have to put down solar, especially since you're bots, so you have to put down extra solar and just spend all that extra metal on that solar. And so you don't typically see a lot of bots on maps that have no winds. But looking at the terrain features, there's all those prisms sticking out of the ground that make it hard to turn vehicles around and all that. So bots, I don't know, it's kind of like one of these things right now on this map where you just don't know if it's really going to pan out or not. and for me personally, like I don't really know, but I think vehicles are a little bit stronger here, but you have to be very careful about like getting caught between the prisms and stuff like that. It can be really hard to like say for example you're moving vehicles this way, and then you see a raid party up here because you have like like a radar in that location. Then you gotta try to get your vehicles over there to contest it, but they have to go around the prism. They get kind of caught here and they slow down because they're trying to turn around, and now this raid is all of a sudden like advancing and taking out your cluster 3. So it can be a big deal. You know, a pretty sizable difference between vehicles and bots on a map like this where there's so many obstructions. But yeah, lots of raiding going on. We see plenty of rovers going around trying to do what he can. Now, I do want to point out a little bit just the split between Andy here. Very smart decision. Coming back in here, maybe not so much, but you know, sending 3 rovers this way, having 2 of them go that way, and just one going that way, you know, kind of means that now the defense has to be split. And if Barcast wasn't paying enough attention, you know, it's hard to do both. And so you send this guy in here and turn around, and now the enemy's chasing those units instead of chasing these units, allowing these units to potentially do some stuff, right? So just an interesting little tidbit there for you guys out there, that splitting can be really good. It's of course very taxing for the aggressor, but it's even more taxing for the defender to have to, like, you know, chase around all these different units everywhere. But yeah, the game is going to be a little bit slower. So actually I forgot to put on the speed. Let me just put that on now. So now we're at 1.5 speed, and we're going to get cranking on this thing because it is a bit slower on maps like this. But yeah, I want to talk about Andy's commander positioning here. If you think about how he's expanded, he's gone this way and down this way and over this way. So that creates this wall of LLTs and mexes that makes it hard for Barcast to just send a few units through. Now, of course, there are some gaps in the defense here. It's not like laser towers are going to cover everything. So there is a small gap between these laser towers that Barcast could potentially, you know, utilize to his advantage. But at the same time, it's hard to know exactly, you know, how big that gap is, because you can't see the range of your opponent's LTs and stuff as easily. But yeah, Barcast comes in here, takes out LT, takes out one of the nodes in the defense, and gets through here some ticks and a pawn. It's a bit hard for the defending blitz to catch up to him. But yeah, these pawns actually get into the base here, take out one solar, get taken out by the LT. But yeah, Andy has 2 LTs to defend, so you know, took a lot less damage than he would have otherwise. Meanwhile, Andy getting some of his blitzes caught by these pawns. A couple of them get taken out, so that's going to be some nice wrecks for Barcast to have. And honestly, I feel like the bot player really needs those wrecks. It has become a very important part of the game for the bot player to be able to compete with the vehicle player, because, you know, vehicles can expand maybe a little bit quicker. You know, it's a little bit harder at first because you have less units out because the vehicles are that much more expensive. But now at this point, it's like there's plenty of incisors out, and it's really hard for the bot player to be aggressive because the vehicles are out in numbers. And I think that just has to do with the increased cost of pawns and what are they called? What are those guys that we don't build anymore called? The grunts. We don't see a lot of grunts anymore, but hopefully that'll change. But yeah, lots of pawns. But incisors do pretty well against pawns, so it's just kind of a good counter in a way. Just a strong unit. Looks like a couple of these cons on the left-hand side going to get caught. That's certainly a big deal. I mean, that's pretty far from the main base, so like it's going to take a bit for more constructors to get out that way. Pawn's going through the hole here. Vehicle's getting a little slowed down on that turn. Can't quite catch the pawn. Some of the vehicles actually stall out and sit there. Pawn's getting the back kill at max. Decides not to go into the main base because the LTs are there. Barcast. Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed this. There are some blitzes that got surrounded here. Some more wrecks in this corner here for Barcast to have. So he's cranking out some res bots. Gonna be able to pick those guys up, and that's gonna allow him to compete with these vehicles that are that much stronger. The res bot just a very crucial, important part of this matchup, between bots and vehicles. But I did want to point out a little bit, Barcast commander movements has been like this, and so that's just secured a nice like route of mexes for his commander, but at the same time, still getting into a reasonable position here in the center. Meanwhile, pushing up some rocket bots and stuff on these LLTs. A couple of mexes were taken out in the corner here, but I think the LLT will probably take out that last blitz in a moment. But yeah, so I do want to note that Barcast has sent his rocket bots to deal with these light laser towers, and he's done so by going this way instead of from the bottom. And I think that's important because if you go in and cut in this way, it makes it hard to defend these LLTs with blitzes and things, because now this is taken by Barcast as the red player, and so now it's hard to get blitzes down here to defend the LLTs. So Andy here instead, electing to just kind of do some raiding on the side here. Find it Khan decides not to go for it, going to be going down here instead to take out the 3 mechs, and I feel like that's kind of his main strategy here, is to send raiding parties out to take out these 3.0 mechs, or sorry, not 3.0 mechs, this cluster of 3 in the corner of this map. And that's a strong move, of course, because you don't see any other 3 clusters. You have one in your main base, and you have one on the left and right hand side, but none in the middle here. So it can be really strong to just take that out and hinder your opponent's economy in a big way because of it. Even sending some banshees out here to take these mexes out, and that's just so annoying to deal with, because now you got to get your con over there, build anti-air, you gotta build your mexes back up and all that. So pretty annoying stuff. Barcast doing a nice job in the middle though, taking out these LLTs in this position. Andy doing the smart thing, moving his commander back, knowing that there is a big threat coming up here. And looking at the big picture here, I think the play to go Banshees is nice to keep the metal count down, or metal income down for Barcast, but at the same time, it leaves your ground forces so weakened that now Barcast has a significant ground force, especially since he's switched into medium tanks, and he's got res bots to be able to pick up those units. So just a really powerful move here. And then also having enough units to do things like this, like raid on the side. So self-Ds try to go off, but yeah, those LTs go down first. And yeah, it looks like that's going to be cleaned up pretty well. Andy's commander's getting in a little bit of trouble here, but just backs up. This is certainly not enough to run down this commander, especially in this narrow choke where D-guns can just fly in one direction. Makes it really easy to just lose your army. So Barcast being really careful with that and making sure he's just not losing his units there. So Andy here now adding on construction turrets. Barcast probably has some fighters out to deal with those Banshees, and both players are now in air tech. Air can be really useful on a map like this. If you have what's the word? Like if you have superiority in the skies, you can have cons going around the map and rebuilding mexes, and that's really useful on a map where mexes are really spread out. And it takes a long time for those ground cons to get around, rebuild those mexes, whereas air cons can just fly over stuff and cut all that walking time out. They do have less build power, of course, so that's kind of how that evens out. But air cons are still a very good thing in 1v1s, especially on a map like this. But yeah, Barcast has a significant number of fighters out here, so he's going to claim supremacy, or superiority, I should say. And it's going to be really hard for Andy to have enough cons, or to be able to produce cons to retake expansions because of that. So just a pretty smart move from Barcast, but at the same time, maybe leaves his ground forces a little bit weaker. So needing to be a little bit careful in terms of fighting on the ground. Doesn't want to just run his medium tanks in. He kind of wants to use them defensively because he's spent so much more on air. You just can't be that aggressive. And Andy's taking note of that, maybe sending in his medium tanks to try to find some damage. Actually just pulling here for moments. Unfortunately, could be moving. Yeah, okay, starting to move. Gonna go again towards that cluster of 3 mexes. And I'm not sure Barcast has enough to deal with this. He's gonna have to micro this pretty well. and just kind of try to take shots at these medium tanks from the side. Not really able to just contest it head on. Barcast now switching into mostly tanks, I think. He is getting some air cons out now that he has that superiority, so he's going to be able to rebuild these pretty easily. But this is quite a few tanks here for Andy, so I think Andy's going to continue on doing some damage in that bottom left corner, even having another group of tanks going towards the main base here. Maybe going to be able to take out a couple solars, or maybe he's just going to swing back because this can be really dangerous, especially since he sees a lot of medium tanks for defense. So yeah, just going to go back up here, try to save his medium tanks for later. And that's kind of the nice thing too, is if you're like, I don't suggest going straight for the base. Like, you don't want to just go around the map and go straight for the base. Like, you can in lower levels, because your opponent might not have the APM to deal with it, or maybe they screw up their economy a little bit. But instead, the better thing to do is just kind of like snake around on the outskirts of your opponent's territory, because that gives you a retreat path with your expensive medium tanks. And that can be really important to like just maintain the numbers of medium tanks and not just gift a whole bunch of reclaim and res for your opponent. So Andy here playing really smart, just having clusters of tanks going around destroying various key locations such as those bottom left and right corners. Let's see, do we have any T2 transition yet? No. Okay, so I do see a lot of players transition. They go from vehicles to air, and maybe they try a bombing run, then they go immediately into T2. And I feel like that's such a mistake, because it leaves your ground forces so weakened because you just spent so much on air that can't really fight ground. And then you're going and spending a whole bunch on your T2 lab and stuff. And if the bombing run does well, it's like a good way to like get ahead and stay ahead just by like teching up. But if your opponent has more ground forces, it can be a really, really big mistake. And Barcat certainly has more ground forces at this point after all those raids were cleaned up. Anytime you raid like that, no matter what you're raiding with, you're sort of trading your units for your opponent's infrastructure, for those mexes, for those solars. So, it's something to keep, or to be mindful of, that doing that, it's like these three stouts, like they're going to die. They're not going to get like favorable trades, because you're in the enemy territory. It's a lot easier for the enemy to defend it in a way, or take a better engagement, I guess, for the defense. And so it's just a good thing to keep in mind, that after you do something like that, you're going to be a little bit weaker. And Barcast now, certainly has a lot more units out here. This is a scary amount of medium tanks. And okay, so we do have a T2 transition actually for both players. Actually building a fusion immediately for Barcast. And yeah, I mean, this is probably fine because both players went T2, but Andy certainly has to contend with all these medium tanks that are out. Maybe thinking that he did more damage to that raid than he did, or maybe just not knowing that Barcast just has that many more medium tanks floating around. But either way, going to take significant damage here, as all these mexes are going to be taken out. Now, again, I want to point out, sweeping in the way that Barcast did, he didn't just attack it head on. If you attack it from this direction, that means that Andy can just send reinforcements this way and deal with it. Whereas coming in this way, you kind of have room to maybe turn around if you need to. You also have room to split up, take out these mexes, and then also just retreat out of here. That cuts off this position here, so it's harder to defend with medium tanks and things, because now you're catching up to your opponent. And certainly running from your opponent while attacking yields better results than the person chasing does not get better engagements. The person running away gets better engagements, because the attacks are led a little bit. So it's just a little bit better for the defender in a lot of cases, unless you do moves like that. So very smart moves there from Barcast. And Andy, of course, doing what they can to push this away. Has the Bulls out now, has the Jaguars. Jaguars do okay against medium tanks, but they're not like, the advantage isn't like crazy good or anything like that. And so, yeah, just going to rely a little more on Bulls at this point to take more favorable engagements. And look at that, they're even like really good against the Jaguars too. So, yeah, I think Andy here going to be able to hold on. These Jaguars even getting picked off. Really nice like pickoffs for for our buddy Andy. Yeah, Barcat's going to be moving into his own bulls. But meanwhile, been adding on energy, adding on these 2 fusions, and that is allowing him to reclaim some of these solars and get a lot of that money back. It's certainly a lot of money that you spend on solars on this kind of map. It looks like Andy not doing the same thing. If we look at the cost that's spent on all these solars, like nearly 8 grand in metal. Being able to reclaim that is certainly a big deal. A good useful thing to do, turn it into something more efficient like a fusion. It's certainly helpful to return some of that metal. You might be wondering why you don't see a lot of advanced solars, or why you see a lot of basic solars. The reason is, advanced solars, like, they're more efficient in terms of metal, but they cost so much energy that you don't really want to build it when you don't have energy. And on maps like this, it's better to underbuild basic solar and have just enough basic stuff that your energy needs. And if you try to build something bigger with that, then all of a sudden you're just kind of stalling on energy. And if you have that energy already, then you don't need more energy. So why build the advanced solars? You should just be building more units with that money, if that's the case. It's more like if you're low on metal, high on energy, and you want to reclaim some of the basic solars for those advanced solars, it can be a little bit of a boost in terms of metal income doing that. But it is, it's also very APM intensive to build all those solars and then reclaim them all and all that. I've gotten away from myself a little bit. There are some bombers being produced here. Barcast with his air dominance coming in here. Lots of fighters. There is some flak trucks here for Andy. And yeah, Barcast coming in from a good angle though, kind of sidestepping some of those flak trucks. He goes for this lab. I'm not sure if this is okay, I guess he didn't see the T2 lab. Or no, okay, sorry, he's going for the fusion, but didn't have nearly enough bombers to take that out. A lot of them get picked off on the way there. And I think this is what Andy needed. He needed that in order to kind of get back into the game a little bit after taking so much damage and going into T2. You don't really have the numbers or the speed to really put down a lot of pressure on your opponent when you go T2. So whoever has the T1 units out at that point can certainly do a lot. I actually am a big supporter of, build T2, get out that constructor and stuff, but instead of going T2 units, go T1 units for a little bit as you're upgrading stuff, because now you have the opportunity to just have a lot more units out than your opponents, and you can apply that pressure into various locations, on the sides and stuff where the T2 player has trouble catching up to those units because they only have so many T2 units. I mean, you think about a bull, it's 950 metal, compared to a stout that's, I believe, like 250 or like 270, I want to say. So it's just a lot more money to put into one tank, and that one tank can't be split, in so many ways. So, I just think it's really useful to have some T1 going around and doing some damage. Yeah, Barcat's in a pretty good position here with all these bulls coming around. Andy a bit out of position. I do want to mention, the movement here. Barcat's coming up this way. Andy's setting up this way. Instead of fighting directly, Barcast is trying to find opportunities for free damage instead of just trading his bulls around with Andy near Andy's base. I mean, that makes it so that those wrecks and things belong to Andy. So trying to find damage elsewhere is a very good thing to do. Now Andy actually trying to sneak in some res bots here, trying to pick up these bulls that died on this left-hand side. There's a lot of res bots, so he's going to be able to do this rather quickly. He doesn't quite have the energy for it though. I mean, he does, but he is kind of stalling a little tiny bit here as he picks those up. Now the res bots, unfortunately, oh man, that is huge. That is so much money, so much opportunity lost because he lost those res bots. It's certainly a big deal, but you try various things and sometimes they just don't work out. And meanwhile, Barcast, doing some damage on this right-hand side. So I think Andy's getting further and further behind here. Spending all that time and effort building all those res bots for them to just die like that. I mean, I like the play, but It's just a little too, what's the word? Well, I don't know. I lose my words sometimes, but it's too risky. That's the word I was looking for. It's too risky to maybe do something like that, though. Yeah, Barcast now with plenty of bulls. I mean, I think, just trying to get the red spots down here so that the bulls don't get resurrected by Barcast. I mean, and that's really the other troubling thing with going T2 is you start having these battles where you got these big wrecks that are left behind, and then, the whoever's territory it's in is going to get picked up by your opponent. So trying to contest that, trying to reclaim that metal before your opponent is able to resurrect it, is certainly a very useful thing to do. And is this Barcast coming in with okay, it's got an atomic bomber, so yeah, it's probably going to go looking for a fusion or something like that, maybe a commander, but obviously he knows the commander's probably on the right hand side. That's where he's last seen it, I should say. But yeah, this bomber coming in, going straight for the fusion. The fighters are distracting for the bomber, and there goes the fusion. That's basically GG, I think. I mean, just losing all that is certainly a big deal. Now, Andy did a nice job, spreading out his fusion, so it's not like they're all exploded. But that's certainly going to put him a little bit behind because fusions are so expensive. And then also the infrastructure that was built nearby is also exploded at that point. So, but yeah, Barcat's going into T2 air at this point, and this could be another strong move. Get out those roughnecks, and start pressuring these peripheral expansions as well. But Andy here was sitting with some shredders as flak trucks, going to deter those roughnecks, and now it's going to be hard for Barcast to continue on doing damage with those roughnecks. I think this is kind of a mistake from Barcast. I mean, the idea is there to keep the constructors out of this location, but at the same time, there's just so much flak. And I don't know, Andy's not moving his units around. I think he might have just, I don't have the chat on, so I don't know, but he might have just GG'd and is thinking about the game and what maybe could have changed or thinking about just what's going on. But I think Andy just getting a little bit behind in just so many different ways with, that T2 transition when Barcast had more ground forces, I think was a mistake. Building all those Banshees, the intent was there, but at the same time, it's just they are kind of expensive. If Barcast reacted really well, really quickly, got some fighters up, took out those Banshees, and they didn't really do that much. And then just, Barcast being able to retake those lost expansions with air cons, doing that rather well, rather quickly, means that all that damage from those Banshees and all those attacks just were free money instead. So Barcast playing a really good game here. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this match. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. I hope you guys don't mind the CNC music. I certainly, maybe not this song as much, but it's very nostalgic for me. In case, and I hope it's nostalgic for some of you as well. But yeah, let me know if you guys enjoy the CNC music. Let me know if you enjoy the 1.5 times speed. I think it certainly helps the pacing of the cast a bit to do it that way. Anyways, that's it for me. See you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.